morning, evening, or night, wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time, as we wrap up Tuesday, 6th May, 2025. Let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is shifting its economic focus towards domestic consumption after a decade of prioritizing productivity. High-value-added industries like biomedicine saw a decrease in their contribution to China's total economic inputs, falling to a half-year low due to decreased capital inputs. To boost domestic demand, China implemented expanded visa-free policies and upgraded tax rebate programs, resulting in a sharp increase in foreign visitors during the recent Labor Day holiday, where consumers also took advantage of a trade-in program. Despite consumer enthusiasm for instant delivery services, a demand problem persists. The Canton Fair saw strong overseas attendance, but transaction volumes failed to reach pre-pandemic levels. Pest infestations, thriving under El Niño conditions and migrating to southern China, are causing rice yield losses, raising concerns about potential food shortages. In international relations, China has broken ground on 3 tunnels for the China-Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Shikiu Railway, marking a major construction milestone after nearly 3 decades of planning. Some analysts suggest that President Putin's expected attendance at events in Moscow signals support for the post-WE international order. Concerns persist regarding China's military drills near Taiwan, sparking discussions about the island's energy security and the possibility of China selling off its U.S. Treasury-issued assets amid worsening bilateral ties with the United States. Domestically, government jobs are becoming more attractive due to crackdowns on corruption and fewer well-paid opportunities in the private sector amid a slowing economy. China is also focusing on recycling critical materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel to drive profits and bolster resource security amidst trade tensions with the U.S. Turning to the United States, President Trump's decision to end a tariff loophole that benefited Chinese retailers shipping goods directly to us. Consumers may lead companies like Temu and Shein to shift their focus to the European market. This decision has implications for apparel makers selling to America, who are now considering alternative markets or cheaper locations, both within and outside of China. Concerns have been raised by some analysts about China potentially selling off its U.S. Treasury-issued assets amid worsening bilateral ties. In response to technological concerns, Rep. Bill Foster introduced a bill targeting the smuggling of NVIDIA chips to China, aiming to leverage technology to track the chips after they are sold. Former U.S. officials also note that a U.S. blacklist on China contains errors and outdated details due to limited staffing. The U.S. is also facing challenges related to critical minerals, with one analyst noting that while Trump targets specific nations and minerals, China is expanding its influence through bilateral and multilateral engagement. Finally, in Taiwan, Beijing's latest military drills near the island have sparked discussions on its energy security if simmering cross-strait tensions boil over. United Kingdom, Downing Street has resisted pressure to reverse cuts to winter fuel payments. West Streeting, a prominent Blairite within the Labour Party, stressed the need for impactful change to ensure Labour's continued governance. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair cautioned progressive parties against complacency. Within the Conservative Party, some backbenchers are reportedly considering a leadership challenge, with concerns voiced about Kemi Badenoch's capabilities. Critics suggest some Conservative MPs are prioritizing personal advancement over public duty. Economically, UK business activity declined for the first time since October 2023 due to trade tensions. Car sales also dropped by over 10% in April 2024 with 120,331 new vehicles registered, influenced by vehicle excise duty changes. Associated British Foods, ABF, owner of Kingsmill, is negotiating with Endless, Hovis's private equity owner, for a potential acquisition of Allied Bakeries. The UK commemorated the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day with a parade in London, featuring British and Allied forces, including Ukrainian troops. Ukraine-Russia conflict. A significant Ukrainian drone strike resulted in flight restrictions at numerous Russian airports before Victory Day. Ukraine also launched ground incursions into Russia's Kursk region, encountering resistance and minefields, and targeted a power station, signaling a potential new offensive. Russian law bloggers have reported on these Ukrainian ground attacks. Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed the West tried to provoke him into using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. He also initiated patriotic education in Russian schools in early 2022. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly seeking Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's assistance to mediate a ceasefire agreement between Kyiv and Moscow. Russia. Beyond the conflict, a Russian reporter critical of the war in Ukraine has sought refuge in France after her disappearance in April raised concerns. Japan is grappling with rising public unease about war. This anxiety stems from the war in Ukraine and the assertive foreign policies of China and North Korea. Japan is trying to manage relations with both the US and China. While this is evident in a trade negotiator's visit to Washington, which coincided with a Japan-China Friendship Group's visit to Beijing. The United States has denied Japan's request for a full exemption from a 10% reciprocal tariff. U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins will be visiting Japan, India, and Vietnam soon for tariff negotiations. These negotiations may involve seeking market-opening measures for agricultural products. Japan and India have agreed to strengthen their defense ties. This includes establishing a senior officer-level dialogue body at Japan's defense minister, Jin Nakatani, inspected a joint military guard of honor in New Delhi. Japan, China, South Korea, and ASEAN countries have agreed to strengthen their regional financial safety net through a new lending facility. According to a government survey, visitors to Japan find the lack of public trash bins to be the biggest inconvenience. The end of Golden Week saw a surge in travelers returning to Tokyo and other major cities. In Osaka, the City Board of Education organized classes for elementary school students to disassemble devices slated for disposal. Canada's newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to meet with President Trump at the White House amid trade war anxieties fueled by U.S. tariffs. Carney previously warned Canadians about Trump's alleged economic dominance goals. Former Deputy Prime Minister Sean Manley spoke about Carney's tariff response plans on NPR. Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith seeks greater autonomy for Alberta, proposing a separation referendum if a citizen petition gains traction. The referendum, planned for next year, highlights the energy-rich province's issues with past federal Liberal administration. Surveys suggest almost 1 in 5 conservative voters support annexation by the United States. Turning to the United States, President Trump is readying to host Prime Minister Carney amidst the tense trade environment. Separately, a group of U.S. senators is pushing for an inquiry into potential violations of U.S. law regarding humanitarian aid controls by Israel and other governments. India's government is actively pursuing the repatriation of ancient artifacts. A legal notice demands the cessation of the Paperwa Gems auction in Hong Kong. India argues the sale is illegal and seeks the return of the Buddhist relics. In trade talks with the United States, India proposed eliminating tariffs on steel, auto parts, and pharmaceuticals subject to import limits. Measures to combat rising temperatures include smartwatch distribution in Ahmedabad for research. The Home Ministry has mandated extensive civil defense preparations. These include testing air, raid sirens, and educating the public on blackouts and evacuations. Regarding tensions in the region, the United Nations Security Council is holding closed-door discussions on the India and Pakistan situation. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres voiced concerns that relations are at a multi-year high point of tension. Australia saw Liberal Tim Wilson projected to win back the Goldstein seat. He defeated Teal Independent Zoe Daniel. This marks the first time a Teal Independent has lost a seat gained in the 2022 federal election. ABC's Anthony Green announced Wilson's victory after postal votes were counted. Meanwhile, Ian Wilkinson testified in the mushroom poisoning case involving Aaron Patterson. Wilkinson survived the lunch that killed his wife and 2 others. Patterson is accused of murdering the guests with poisoned mushroom. The United Kingdom's Deliveroo is set to be acquired by DoorDash. The US rival offered £2 sterling 90 billion for the London-based delivery company. Deliveroo staff are expected to receive nearly £66 sterling million from the deal. CEO Will Shu could receive £172 sterling million. The board has recommended shareholders approve the takeover. In the United States, tourists at Alcatraz shared thoughts on Trump's plan to reopen the prison. The former president suggested reviving the infamous jail. Hamas has announced it will halt truce negotiations with Israel until the hunger war in Gaza ends, urging international intervention to stop Israel's actions. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has revealed plans for a more intense offensive in Gaza, including a forceful entry and the relocation of Palestinians southward. The Israeli cabinet has approved expanding the war, seizing territory for a sustained military presence, and altering food and aid distribution. A Palestinian boy, known for singing about the conflict in Gaza, was tragically killed in an Israeli military strike. Turning to Yemen, the Israeli military launched airstrikes targeting Houthi rebels in Hodeidah, a Red Sea port city, following a Houthi missile strike on Israel's main airport. Germany witnessed a political upset as Friedrich Merz, a prominent conservative leader and potential chancellor nominee, was unexpectedly rejected in the Bundestag's vote, falling short of the required majority. This unprecedented outcome marks the first instance in post-war German history where a candidate has failed to win the chancellorship in the initial round of voting. Turning to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Moscow airports experienced temporary shutdowns due to successive nights of Ukrainian drone attacks aimed at the Russian capital. These strikes occurred amidst Moscow's preparations for a military parade commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union and Allied victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Globally, the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe, Day, VE Day, was observed with parades and memorials, honoring Nazi Germany's surrender to Allied forces. Rwanda is currently engaged in initial talks with the United States about a possible agreement to host migrants deported from the U.S. Foreign Minister Olivier J.P. Nduhunjahe has acknowledged the early stage of these discussions. The arrangement would involve potential U.S. financial support to help migrants integrate into Rwandan society. This support would include stamps and job creation programs. The U.S. government is seeking to find countries willing to receive deportees as part of its broader immigration strategy. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, has rejected Sudan's attempt to hold the United Arab Emirates, UAE, accountable for alleged genocide in West Darfur, citing jurisdictional issues. The case arose from the ongoing 2-year civil war in Sudan, with the UAE accused of arming the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, The UN's top court is also set to rule on Sudan's request for emergency measures against the UAE. Adding to the instability, Sudanese military officials reported that paramilitary fighters launched drone attacks on key infrastructure in Port Sudan, including the airport, port, and a hotel, causing air traffic disruptions and fires. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, is pushing for a new law to prevent children under 16 from accessing social media. The aim is to protect them from harmful content and cyberbullying. Social media platforms would be required to verify users' ages or face penalties of up to $2 million. Meanwhile, ex-Prime Minister Sir John Key voiced apprehensions regarding the potential effects of Trump's tariff measures on New Zealand's film sector, emphasizing Trump's strategic use of tariffs. Pakistan's defense minister warned that India might launch a military strike along the line of control. He accused Prime Minister Modi of pushing the region toward nuclear conflict. The defense minister also alleged Indian involvement in terrorism. In response, Pakistan conducted a second missile test, launching a surface-to-surface missile with a 120-kilometer range. Lufthansa, Air France, and other airlines are rerouting flights to avoid Pakistani airspace, impacting Pakistan's overflight fee revenue. Meanwhile, a fuel tanker explosion in Pakistan has caused 19 deaths and injured over 40. Romania saw Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu resign, following his coalition's setback in the presidential race, where their candidate did not reach the runoff election on May 18. Ciolacu emphasized his pro-EU ruling coalition maintained no legitimacy despite populist George Simeon's strong performance in the initial election round. Consequently, Romania's interim president moved swiftly to appoint a new prime minister to lead the country. Sudan is facing escalating conflict as Port Sudan, previously a safe haven, experiences its third consecutive day of drone strikes. The Rapid Support Forces, RSF, are believed to be responsible for targeting the airport and an army base. A fuel depot was also hit, resulting in a large fire and a city-wide blackout. Explosions have been reported across Port Sudan. Peru is grappling with a crisis as President Dina Boluarte suspended gold mining in Patas and imposed a 12-hour curfew after the murder of 13 gold mine workers. Police discovered the bodies within a mine tunnel operated by La Poderosa, a Peruvian gold mining company. This tragedy underscores the escalating conflict in the region, driven by competition for ore and the allure of illegal gold mining amid soaring gold prices. El Salvador saw President Nayib Bukele ordering the arrest of 5 bus company leaders. Their offense was defying his mandate for free public transport. This free service was meant to last a week in San Salvador. The order aimed to ease traffic during major highway construction. France has provided refuge to Russian reporter Ekaterina Barabash, who was facing imprisonment for her critical reporting on the Russian army. Reporters Without Borders, RSF, facilitated her safe passage out of Russia. Meanwhile, President Emmanuel Macron is working to attract scientists to Europe, particularly in light of the Trump administration's reductions in research funding in the United States and threats against prominent universities such as Harvard and Columbia, which could include freezing their federal funds. France sees this as an opportunity to strengthen its scientific community. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum is addressing worries about possible U.S. military involvement in the country's fight against drug cartels. Sheinbaum clarified her stance after former U.S. President Donald Trump claimed he had asked Mexico for permission to send the American military to help combat the cartels, a proposal she firmly declined. President Sheinbaum maintains that her communication with Trump has been very good. Serbia is gripped by political turmoil University students are protesting, demanding immediate snap elections. These protests follow months of anti-corruption demonstrations. These demonstrations have shaken President Alexander Vucic's power. President Vucic abruptly ended his visit to the U.S. His planned trip to Moscow is now uncertain. This indicates a foreign policy crisis for Serbia. Greece is under scrutiny from Europe's human rights watchdog, which has called for an end to the country's practice of migrant pushbacks. Separately, in an unrelated incident, a 17-year-old Polish student was apprehended in Greece in connection with the death of a 16-year-old girl in Poland. Domestically, the Greek government has launched Kids Wallet, a state application designed to limit children's screen time and monitor their online activities. Taiwan's currency soared to a 3-year peak, hitting 29.59 per dollar, propelled by an impressive 8% surge in value over just 2 days. Across the Asian markets, stock performance presented a varied landscape on Tuesday, reacting to a downturn on Wall Street that had previously interrupted a robust 9-day rally. The Vatican is currently abuzz as the College of Cardinals gathers to elect a new pope, contemplating profound shifts, including the historic possibility of selecting the first pontiff from either Asia or Africa. The UK is tightening student visa rules for applicants from Nigeria, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. But this decision stems from worries about individuals overstaying their visas. The Home Office is collaborating with the National Crime Agency. They aim to identify and profile applicants at higher risk of seeking asylum after their studies. Vietnam has called on China and the Philippines to avoid actions infringing on its sovereignty in the South China Sea. The country is also attracting increased Chinese investment, owing to similar conditions that previously propelled mainland China's industrial expansion. In addition, WHAM is actively displaying diplomatic prowess while upholding Vietnam's national interests. Syria's newly formed government includes Hind Kabawat, the sole female minister. She plans to use her conflict mediation experience to help the country's youth. Kabawat's ministerial role, however, presents substantial challenges. The complex situation in Syria also creates the potential for a conflict between Israel and Turkey. Bangladesh anticipates a significant shift as ex-leader Khaleda Zia returns, intensifying calls for the interim government to set an election date. The garment industry in Bangladesh, a vital economic engine, is also bracing for potential tariff-related disruptions. Sri Lanka has begun local elections, the first electoral test for President Disanayake's government since their win in late 2024. The results will show how the public views the new government's actions. The Philippines has seen one of its citizens emerge as a potential candidate for the papacy, generating considerable excitement within the nation's Catholic community. Shifting to India, a growing trend reveals that more and more Indian students are re-evaluating their decisions to pursue higher education in the United States, potentially due to concerns about visa policies, safety, and the rising cost of education. In Singapore, Ministers Ong Ye Kung and Chee Hong Tat have issued firm denials regarding any business affiliations or relationships with Su Hai-jin. Su Hai-jin was subsequently convicted in connection with a significant money laundering operation, and the minister's statements aim to dispel any perceived link between themselves and the illicit activities. In Indonesia, specifically West Sumatra province, a tragic bus accident claimed the lives of 12 individuals, among them 2 children. Initial reports indicate the bus suffered brake failure while descending a steep incline, leading to the driver's inability to maintain control. Investigations are underway to confirm the mechanical failure and to examine other potential contributing factors to the crash. European Union power grids urgently need $1 trillion upgrade to prevent blackout. This follows a recent blackout in Spain and Portugal, which is currently under investigation. The incident underscores the necessity for significant investment in infrastructure across the EUI. The Philippines and the United States recently concluded a joint drone drill. This exercise underscored the growing importance of addressing unmanned weapon systems in the contentious South China Sea. However, the Philippine warship BRP Miguel Malvar unexpectedly sank. This incident occurred before the ship could be used as a target during the joint Balikatan drills, with the U.S. military representing the logistical hurdle for the exercises. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing scrutiny. A recent report highlighted a significant rise in hate crimes targeting religious minorities. The government is responding with increased funding for community security programs. The funds aim to protect vulnerable groups and promote interfaith dialogue. In the latest from France, President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for further pension reforms. These reforms have sparked widespread protests across the country. Macron argues the changes are necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of the French pension system. Opposition parties and labor unions are vowing to continue their resistance. Moving to Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is navigating a complex energy crisis. The country is working to reduce its reliance on Russian gas. Germany is investing heavily in renewable energy sources and seeking alternative gas suppliers. Public debate continues on the pace and impact of the energy transition. Ghana's costly national cathedral project has stalled amid political controversy, leaving behind an expensive hole in the country's finances. Shifting to South Africa, over 100 rhinos were poached in the first quarter of the year, a stark reminder of the ongoing wildlife crisis. The Sahim Ali's musical goddess, about the goddess of music finding refuge and love, at an Afro-jazz club in Mombasa, Kenya, will open May 20 at the Public Theater in New York. The Maldives has secured an $8.80 billion investment from Qatar, as it grapples with a potential foreign debt crisis and foreign exchange shortages in its $6.50 billion economy. In the Solomon Islands, Prime Minister Maneo survived a second leadership challenge after a motion of no confidence was withdrawn. Amid escalating gun violence in Samoa, there are growing calls to arm the police force, granting them expanded authority to carry firearms. Tragedy struck in Nepal as an American climber died while attempting to scale Mount Makalu. Turning to the Middle East, Air France and Lufthansa are among the European airlines rerouting flights to Asia to avoid Pakistani airspace due to regional instability, increasing travel times and costs. In Iraq, the absence of a comprehensive legal framework hinders efforts to protect the rights of women and children. Cardinal Mario Grech from Malta serves as the Secretary General of a key advisory body of bishops. Meanwhile, in Norway, customs officials were alerted after employees at a fruit distributor discovered a package of cocaine hidden within a box of bananas. In the U.S., nearly 300 asylum seekers were deported to Panama under a controversial deal, leaving them stranded without resources to return home. The U.S. Treasury Department has designated the Karen National Army, led by So Chit-thu, as a transnational criminal organization, following an announcement from the OPEC Plus cartel about increased oil production. U.S. oil prices dropped to $57 a barrel. Finally, in Fiji, the Justice Minister has emphasized the importance of decorum after a video of a prison chief's bar brawl went viral, reminding public officials to uphold discipline. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.